Hello and greetings from Brighton and greetings from Hove. I've always been fascinated by borders and borderlands, and so I've decided to start this YouTube channel to explore some of these places, starting off mainly in the UK, cities, counties and so on, and then eventually exploring international borders, and in particular looking at those places that maybe have slightly strange borders or quirks of history that have led to them being a bit more interesting, let's say, than your standard border area. So Brighton and Hove is now one city, but was once upon a time two different towns in Sussex in the United Kingdom. They became one unitary council in 1997 and then were actually designated city status in 2001. Before that, they were actually two separate towns. If you were driving along certain roads, you would actually see a sign saying you've now entered Hove or you've now entered Brighton, but those have now gone. The towns were always interconnected. The football team is called Brighton and Hove Albion, and that team was formed back in the early 1900s. So even back then, the place was seen as some form of twin city, even if it wasn't officially. But people from other parts of the country have always generally referred to the place as Brighton rather than Brighton and Hove, which is possibly why the phrase Hove actually came about, which is something that people from Hove have often found themselves saying when people have asked where they come from. Do they come from Brighton? The answer being no, Hove actually. That phrase has become so well known that actually you see people wearing t-shirts with that phrase on it. So behind me is what is known as the Peace Statue, and this now pretty much forms the border of where Brighton and Hove used to meet when they were separate towns. You can see the bollards behind me leading up to the statue. These apparently, according to my research, have been moved a few inches over, so actually not following the actual traditional path of the border. Let's take a bit of a closer look. The Peace Statue was erected in 1912. You might be able to make out the inscription there, which says the inhabitants of Brighton and Hove provided a home for the Queen's nurses and erected this monument in memory of King Edward VII. And was a testimony of their enduring loyalty. There's a picture there on the statue of old King Edward VII himself, and the angel at the top of the statue holding the olive branch and some kind of orb thingy. It's kind of apt that the statue was erected in memory of King Edward VII. He was often known at the time as the peacemaker. He was someone who would often make trips to mainland Europe to visit the governments and the heads of state of other nations. He was pretty much related to most of European royalty at the time, and was well known as a genial man, lover of bon mot, and apparently a really good linguist, fluent in French and German. Unfortunately, there was one member of his family he didn't get on very well with, and that was his nephew, Emperor Wilhelm II, who of course was someone we were involved with in the First World War. Apparently Edward VII was very worried that Wilhelm was going to kick off at some point, and he was clearly right worrying about that. Edward died in 1910. I think he was only on the throne for about 9 years because his mother, Queen Victoria, obviously lived to a ripe old age. and the statue was erected in 1912. Commonly known now as the Peach statue in Brighton and Hove. It stands right on the border, which is why we're here. Obviously there have never been wars between Brighton and Hove, but it's nice that we have the Peace statue right in between the two parts of the Twin City. Let's walk some of the border. So following the bollards basically takes us along the border. Shopping trolley there, excellent. But as you can see, if we kept going, we'd end up walking into fine buildings of Hove. So we're going to have to take a little diversion around the corner and then get back onto the border. So on Little Western Street, we're back pretty much on the Brighton and Hove border now, walking north away from the sea. It's not always totally clear where the actual border is in Brighton and Hove. They certainly shift over a little bit here and there according to where the council's decided to draw the line. Sometimes it can be roughly to do with voting constituencies and so on. But I think I'm roughly following where it tends to be thought of as being. Got to a good point here. Check out the sign, Little Western Street, with the old-fashioned County Borough of Brighton title above it. And then on the other side of the road it says Little Western Street, and underneath it says, we've got one over there, it says Hove 1, which I assume is the old postcode. Carry on and try not to get run over again. So we've crossed over from Little Western Street, following the border, and just got to this interesting paving slab here, which you might be able to make out. There's a line down the middle. On the left it says HP, and on the right BP. This relates to the old parish borders, which is pretty much where the traditional borders of towns and villages and cities were marked out by, the old parish borders. So it's great that that's still there and shows some kind of indication of where Brighton ends and Hove begins. Actually, looking back at that paving slab there, I think that actually Hove might start like this wall on my left, so actually it might well be that boundary passage, we're still in Brighton, but that border with Hove is to the left. So I'm about halfway up Boundary Passage and I've just come across this old boundary marker. Looks pretty old. It says BP on there, so I guess that's indicating Brighton Parish is this side of the alley. Fantastic. Just did a quick bit of Google research on that boundary marker, and apparently it's grade 2 listed, which means in the UK that it's been designated something of historical significance, and it shouldn't be altered or changed or removed. So I think that's pretty cool. Now just come to the end of Boundary Passage and I found another one. Again, it says BP, so marks the place where Brighton Parish ends and Hove Parish begins. Now walking up Norfolk Terrace, pretty much back in Brighton at the moment until we can get back onto what the actual border is itself. Just something of interest about Boundary Passage back there, locally known as a twitten, which I'm told is a Sussex word for alleyway, and that actually lots of different parts of the country, or lots of different parts of England at least, have different words for alleyways, and yeah, the Sussex one is Twitton. So I've just turned the corner, taking a left onto Temple Gardens, which runs east to west, and have found another boundary marker on the south side of Temple Gardens. And there it is, B on the left, H on the right. I think there might have been a P underneath, you can't quite see there. Maybe the pavement's been raised. It's yeah, so Brighton on the left to the east and Hove on the right to the west, marking the line. So once again, if we walked in that direction, we'd walk into some buildings, so to make another diversion, see if we can pick up the border again and maybe find another boundary marker. So as we were saying earlier, Brighton and Hove became a city in 2001 and is Brighton and Hove officially, not just Brighton, not just Hove, Brighton and Hove, which makes it a twin city. And it's strange that more isn't made of that. There are famous cities that are twin cities around the world, Minneapolis and St. Paul in Minnesota. Budapest, the capital of Hungary, is also made up of two cities, Buda and Pest, which have become one. You could maybe argue that Manchester and Salford, up in the north of England, are twin cities, although they might argue against that. Yeah, just an interesting observation. There are more of them around the world. Maybe one day we'll get to explore them once everything's calmed down a bit. So I've headed further north and then turned left again onto Windlesham Avenue, and halfway along found another boundary marker. And there it is, down on the pavement, BP on the left for Brighton Parish and HP on the right for Hove Parish. The post above it also says FP, but I have no idea what that means. Going across the road now quickly just to see whether there's one on the other side, continuing the line there. It does actually look like there is a paving slab there with a line down it. It looks a bit like one we just looked at over the other side of the road, but there's no indication whether it's actually a parish boundary or not, but I think you can probably guess it probably is or was. Anyway, we're going to head further north now and see if we can walk the last part of this border. So now coming towards the end of our border walk in Brighton and Hove. Currently walking north direction up Dyke Road, which I'm informed is now pretty much forms the border north between Brighton and Hove. The road eventually ends up at famous Devil's Dyke in the north of the city. Well worth a visit one day if you're ever in this part of the UK. We're just going to look for one more boundary marker, which I've been told is just up ahead at the junction with Old Shoreham Road. So let's see if we can hunt it down. Found a sign with FP on it again. I really do not have any idea what that is. I'm going to have to look it up. So here we are at a very noisy junction of Old Shoreham Road and Dyke Road, and I found the last boundary marker I was looking for. Let's take a look. So here it is. This one actually says PP on it, which I was a bit confused by it, but I've just looked it up, and apparently the reason is this actually marks the old boundary between Hove Parish and Preston Parish. Now, according to what I found on Google, it marks the former Hove Preston boundary to 1928, and although the present borough boundary does not run along the same lines, it's mirrored to the stone. So Preston is a part of Brighton, just over that way, to the to the north and west, north and east of here. So I guess you could say this is another Brighton and Hove boundary marker. So yeah, I think we found everything we were looking for on this border walk. I just found another one. I was just walking down Davigdor Road, walking south, and just came across this in the ground. It's another boundary marker. Brighton Parish there, Hove Parish there. So it shows where the border kind of goes off in a north-easterly direction, which is actually where we've just been, up at the Dyke Road, Old Shoreham Road junction. So there you go, there are actually more than I realised. Maybe if I keep an eye out as I'm walking back down, we might see a few more. Anyway, so yeah, it's been a nice little exploration of a city that did have a border, because it wasn't a city before, it was two towns. So there was a border, and now there isn't really, but there sort of still is. Classic Brighton and Hove, always likes to be a bit different. So we're now out at a very noisy A23, and the reason we've come out here is to just take a quick final look at what are called the Patcham Pylon. So let's turn the camera round. If you've ever driven down into Brighton and Hove, you might actually see these things as you finally get to the city. So there's one here, one over the other side of the road. This used to just be a double dual carriageway. So this actually used to mark the entry into the city. You're not going to see there, it says Brighton up there. So erected in 1928, and they pretty much mark the northern boundary of Brighton and Hove. Actually a seating area here as well. There's one on the other side, although that's down in the middle of the double dual carriageway, so you probably wouldn't want to have a little sit there. But yeah, it's all overgrown. Seems a bit of a shame really. It's obviously not somewhere you'd want to really sit and chill out by a really noisy dual carriageway. But still, it's interesting. And again, according to what I've read, it is grade 2 listed, so protected. So from Brighton and Hove,